My guest on the show today is Stephen Matthew Clark. Stephen Matthew Clark is somebody that I got to meet and see speak about, I guess it was June now, Stephen. And he came and spoke at a community that we're both a part of, and I'm going to call it out. It's Exchange. It is a place where facilitators and coaches, people that want to make a difference in the world, and as John Berghoff, the founder, says, be the guide on the side, not necessarily always the sage on the stage, which is a little bit ironic as a podcast host. But I saw Stephen speak on what he speaks on, what we're going to talk about today. And I just thought, man, that's somebody I'd love to have on my podcast and get to know better on a personal basis, and also have all you get to know him. So Stephen, welcome. Good morning. It is your East Coast. I'm East Coast. We're recording this Monday, August 14th. It's almost 11 a.m. So good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning to you. Thank you. First off, thank you for inviting me to be on the show. Thank you for having an interest in the work that I am doing. And as you named, it was really just an honor and a privilege to meet you on the Exchange approach, and really just an honor and a privilege to have the past few conversations that we've had. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Flattery will get you everywhere in the podcast. I always say that. I'm kidding. Sort of kidding. So Stephen, let's start. Well, I want to say this for everybody, that we're going to talk about something that I've never really addressed on the show before, in quite the same level. We've talked about it in the past with a few guests, but yeah, like, I guess just kick off, Stephen, what would you like the audience to know about you?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Stephen Matthew Clark, as Jason shared with you. And I think one of the things that I'd like everybody to know about me is I'm a person that's actually doing the very best I can to own and atone for the past choices that I made that landed me in a maximum security prison. And I've been in prison now, Jason, for the past 18 years. In 2007, after serving almost 2 years in the county jail, I received a 43-year prison sentence for murder. And I think it's important to be transparent and put all my cards on the table and be completely honest and vulnerable with you and with everybody in the world about the reasons, the causes, and the conditions and the whys of my incarceration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I wanted to address something that the first time we talked, I said, this is blowing my mind. You're in prison right now on a good internet connection, and we're on Zoom together. And that is something that you and I talked about, is a little bit unique to the situation you're in and the system that you're in. I'd love to spend a minute talking about some of the things that you have access to and some of the things you do. And this is going to lead us into the work you're doing that is not the norm, is what you told me. So like, let's go there. Let's talk about that.
So if it's all right, I'd like to just drop a little bit of an anchor and kind of circle back to just full transparency of why I'm here, and then why I'm able to do what we're doing here today.
Yeah.
So in 2006, I owned a mortgage company. I owned a call center and a t-shirt company on the outside, and I had experienced a little bit of success. And unfortunately, my life at the same time was also spiraling out of control because of alcohol and drug use. And I hung out with some pretty rough people. And on Valentine's Day night of 2006, I went out to a strip club to meet a couple of gentlemen that had been calling me. And we stayed and drank. We stayed till about 2 a.m, and we went back to my home. And a fight occurred between myself and another gentleman that was at my house that happened to be a friend of mine. The third gentleman left my home because he assumed that this gentleman would want him to join in beating me up, or I would want him to pull this gentleman off from me. Mm-hmm. And when things became truly violent and what I perceived as a threat to my life, I made a choice to grab a gun that I had, and my friend ended up losing his life. And unfortunately, at the state of mind I was in, I sat on my couch, I remember, Jason, for probably 15 minutes and contemplated, what do I do? I was scared to death. All I could think about was, if I call the police, they're probably going to shoot me and kill me. I was so, I think I was sobered up by the moment, but at the same time, I had so much adrenaline and stress pumping through my system. I couldn't think in a linear fashion. And I made a choice that really contributed to where I am today. It turned a self-defense case into a murder case. I left my home. I made a decision to try to cover it up, and here I am. I'm getting arrested and going in and telling the police what happened. It didn't matter at that point in time because I had already made the choice to do what I did. Throughout my So why am I at where I'm at today? I want to share that with everybody. And I ask everybody, if you're going to judge me, that's okay. People judge people all the time. I completely understand. At the same time, I just wanted to say to everybody that's listening in, I never thought I'd be in a situation where I hurt somebody. I never thought I'd be in a situation where somebody lost their life because of me. I never, ever, ever had any conditioning or any know-how how to handle a situation like that. I was so freaked out and so sideways because of the alcohol and the drugs that I had in my system. The choice that I made was completely out of fear, and honestly, it was out of self-preservation. I thought I was going to go to prison, and I confided in my uncle. He said I should never have left my home and I'd probably be going away. And that's what really prompted the choice to try to cover things up, because I remember seeing like Shawshank Redemption. Have you seen that flick?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Remember the scene where Andy Dufresne, he gets like surrounded by the sisters and like brutally raped. He ends up in the infirmary. Mm-hmm. And that's not the only. We see these most shocking videos, and we see these other movies and TV shows that portray prison as a pretty violent place where people get raped and killed, which it is, and it can be.
Yeah.
So those things were in my consciousness. So I get sentenced, I go to court, I do my best to tell the truth of everything that happened. It's only me. I had the best attorney you could ever imagine, court-appointed attorney. By the time my case came up, after paying for my house for months and my bills and all the stuff that I had very little left. And court-appointed attorney did such a wonderful job. I provided him 35 witnesses, and he called one, me. So that was my defense, me. And the one person that would have really been substantial that was writing me in Cumberland when I was in the jail is the victim's mom. And she's been an ally for me ever since I was arrested, which is really remarkable.
Wow.
Yeah, so getting up here, getting sentenced, one of my first visitors was Felicity.
Yeah.
Rob's
and you
mom.
you knew her prior to this all happening because she was your friend's mother.
That's right. Yeah. This guy, this is a guy that I went to Mexico with, that I went out to snowboarding with, that I had been to a bunch of different places with. It wasn't somebody that I had hatred towards. We had a little bit of a falling out where I had fired him from my mortgage office probably 6 months to 7 months before, which I think he carried some resentment and anger.
Yeah.
But his mom, along the way, her notion, her support was she was just really discouraged and disgusted with the way that I was prosecuted and the way that the state presented the case, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So they presented him as a peaceful, kind-hearted soul when he had maliciously attacked his mother and his family rape before this, who he had a violent record of many different assaults. And them presenting that case like that, they presented me as some kind of gang leader and as a just out of control person. And some of that's true. Absolutely, there's some truth to a little bit of that. I was out of control with my alcohol and drug use. So when I got up here, she visited me. We held hands at the visiting table, and she looked me in the eye and she said, "I forgive you."
Wow.
Yeah, and
right away, once you were and then this is where you are now.
right away. You know, it took a little bit for her to get approved, Jay.
Yeah.
Jason, it took a little bit for her to get approved to come visit me. And in that time, I remember like I got here, I knew immediately I needed to take significant responsibility for the choices. My friend, his life ended. I couldn't even pick up the phone like a normal human being and call the police because of my lifestyle. And in addition, I affected my family. I affected so many people, man. And the guilt and the shame of that shit was heavy. It was
Yeah.
heavy. So, her coming up and holding my hands, it really instilled hope in me. And I think what happened in my consciousness, I knew like I owed my friend that was deceased. I owed her, I owed my family 125% of my all to transform my life and to become the man that God intended me to be.
Yeah. Wow, Stephen, that is powerful. I have so many questions, but I want to start with where do I want to start? I want to go back to the trial. Just did you plead guilty or not guilty?
I pleaded not guilty. Pleaded not guilty. My case was a self-defense case.
Ah,
He was the initial aggressor in my home. The third
yeah,
person that left told the police that this guy was getting ready to attack me.
yeah,
He told the police that my friend that's deceased was the aggressor in the case, aggressor.
yeah,
But what screwed me up was leaving my home. Exactly what my uncle said when I went to his house that morning. You know, we were on the
yeah,
way in. He lived in South Portland in Maine. There's Portland and South Portland. So
yeah.
I went to my mom's. I drove a H2 back then, and like
Mm-hmm.
I thought the police are gonna pull me over. They're gonna kill me. They know what's going on. Ian, which was the guy's name. I anticipated he had called the police. So I go to my uncle's. My uncle's my best friend, and share with my uncle, you know, what had happened. My uncle said, Stevie, we need to go to the police station. So we got in the car, we're heading to the police station. I remember we're probably like 3 blocks from the police station. And he said, I just want to let you know you're not going home this morning. I
Yeah,
said, well, what do you mean? He said, you're not going home. He said, buddy, you should never have left your house. And when he said that, I'm like, what does that mean? He said, you're probably going to be charged with something like manslaughter. They're going to charge you and they're going to hold you for a while. And I go, how long could that be? He's like, probably 10 years. You could probably
wow,
go away for 10 years. And I said, you know, looking back is like 10 years felt like forever, you know? And
yeah,
there was no, it's so weird how like the brain works in fight, flight, or freeze. There was no rational thought. It was almost like an immediate reaction of like turn around and drop him off, you know, and then start making poor choices.
yeah. Wow. So, but you did end up going to the station. You turned yourself in.
No, they ended up arresting me, Jason. They ended up arresting me 6 days later.
Oh, so when you were with your uncle, you didn't end up going. You didn't turn yourself in. They started to investigate, and then they
That's
landed
right.
on you. Okay.
That's right. I turned the truck around, dropped him off, made him make a promise to me that he never saw me, and
Yeah.
try to make it all go away. And all I did was make a horrible situation worse, not only
Yeah.
for myself but for everybody involved.
Yeah. Because then your uncle would be an accessory after the fact, right? Like if he knows something that, oh man,
Everybody, yeah. I just
yeah. I think
so
that
much
bring.
damage.
Yeah. Well, that brings up just a general statement is how our brain, like in those types of like arguably about as high as stress as you're ever going to have in some way, like other than actual life or death, which your brain thinks that is a life or death thing, right? Like your life is over as you know it, as like the decisions that we make in the moment that you know, like sitting here, Jay, you're like, that was the just not the right decision to make for the outcome, but how like and like how we can most of us can point at those things not as high as stakes, but there's many times when we make those decisions, we're like, why do we say that thing to that person? Why do we operate that way? Why do we show up in that specific way? That's just It's crazy. Well, Stephen, I want to first of all thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that. And that what I really liked about, well, and I want to see if there's anything else you think you'd like, or anything else you'd like to share with us around the background before we talk about what you're up to now, because I'm just going to say it. When I saw you speak, I said, story is fascinating, but like really what I want to spend the majority of our time is, what are you doing now? Because this is the story of redemption and how you're making a difference is incredible. And what else, is there anything else you think we should know about you to really set the stage for what you're doing now and what you've been doing over the last, I guess it would be what, 2000. So you've been now incarcerated for 16 years.
I'm starting my 18th year.
Your 18th year. Yeah. And you're in Maine at a maximum security prison. And this is where you've been the entire time.
That's where I've been the entire time, my friend. That's right.
How far are you from Portland?
Goodness gracious, about an hour and 40 minutes.
So if you got family there, that's actually not the visiting is not terrible to come and see you. And I know sometimes people end up in far, far away.
The drive isn't terrible. The visits are terrible. The way that visits are set up, it's inhumane. But that's a whole nother issue and a whole nother topic. We could do a whole podcast on prison visitation.
I think we will. I think we're definitely going to do that. But yeah. So Stephen, is there anything else kind of the background here before we talk about what you've been up to?
Yeah, I think so. I came into the prison in 2007, and you sat on reception for a couple of weeks. You come out, and it's kind of scary. Like, what am I going to have to longest yard somebody off a dinner seat, to prove myself? Because you don't know what to expect walking into a prison, and it's like kind of freaky because it's like, what's going to happen? Is this going to happen? So you put on the big front, a big facade, which everybody does when they come in because they're scared. It's based on fear.
They show that in the Shawshank, right? When he comes in and they I forget the name they call people that like the new person, and they try and scare the crap out of you. I would imagine that's fairly accurate.
Yeah, you see that in Longest Yard too with Adam Sandler, the old football movie where he T-bows the guy right out of the seat, the old Indian fella.
Yeah,
trying to gain the quote unquote respect, right?
Yeah.
So I think what's important to know, I got here and I knew immediately, like I had set in segregation for 2 weeks. So it's like a 24-hour lockdown. When you first come in, you get out for 15 minutes to shower. I think you get like one phone call a week. You might get outside for like an hour a week. I just stayed in my cell, like really just contemplating and looking in the mirror, and I made a choice, and that choice was I need to own this. I need to turn my life around, and I need to do everything I can to understand the whys of my behavior and why am I sitting here with a 43-year prison sentence when my life was pretty good at one point in time. And that's been my mission since. I immediately got involved. I had a friend here that I'd actually known from middle school and had played baseball with, had played football with, and he ended up here. He got mixed up with drugs and did a robbery, and he ended up here. But he was part of the NAACP here at the prison. So immediately upon coming off reception, I got involved with the NAACP as the prison branch secretary, and started immediately doing service work. I started working on issues of segregation abolition. We had a pretty serious segregation unit back in the day. People would be down there for a few years, and it was just screwing up their mental health.
Yeah.
So, really getting into service from the beginning. And then I remember I went out back and I said, I need some help here. I need to really get some help with substance abuse. I just want to share this so people understand the context of what prison looks like in a lot of prisons.
Can I ask a question about the substance abuse, Stephen?
You got it, my friend.
So you would say you had drugs and alcohol issues. Obviously, once you're incarcerated, even in the county, like that all went away. You were obviously not using anything anymore because you didn't have access to it. Did you have to go through like withdrawal, and did you have so you were in a rough place?
Well, just put it this way. I was drinking up to a bottle of Jameson's a day. I was sniffing about an 8 ball of cocaine a day, and chasing it all down with about 8 Oxy 80s a day.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had a very tough go of it when your access to that all went away.
Well, there's something called acute withdrawal, as we
Yeah.
know. Acute withdrawal is like getting sick, can't sleep, you're puking,
Yeah.
things are coming out of both ends of you, and you're in pain.
Yeah.
And then you have something called post-acute withdrawal syndrome. Post-acute withdrawal syndrome is when your nervous system is rewiring itself. So the crazy part of post-acute withdrawal syndrome, the symptoms of that are inability to think clearly, emotional overreactions, problems managing stress, physical coordination problems, sleep disturbances, memory problems.
Oh
So
my God.
think about this. This last 6 months to 24 months, people don't tell you about that. So your brain is completely, like, your neurons and your neural pathways, they're all rewiring, and they're coming back to a place of baseline. So people don't talk about that. So that's why so many people feel in recovery, because they start feeling like a little bit of a physical coordination problem, or they can't sleep, or they're having these emotional overreactions, and they say, this is not worth it, I'm going back to drinking and using. Because they don't educate the majority of people about that. They just say, you have a spiritual malady, you can fix it with this, this, and this, and they don't talk about the science so people understand themselves. So I reach out to substance abuse, finally find enough humility within myself to say, I need help. Reach out, get back in the mail a little piece of paper, Jason, about half of an envelope, and it says on there, Mr. Clark, thank you for reaching out to the substance abuse department. When you have 2 years or less left on your sentence, please reach back out. There's nothing we can do for you right now. Our services are only extended to those with 2 years or less on their sentence. So, as somebody that's still a logical guy, I was struggling and I said, what the F? Are you kidding me right now? I get this long prison sentence. I need help. And you're sending me back this piece of paper that says I can't get that help until I have 2 years left on my sentence? Is this what prison is? Am I supposed to suffer? Am I supposed to be in this constant state of just hopelessness for the next 41 years? And I'll tell you, Jay, I believe in divine intervention. I believe in synchronicities. I believe in source energy always working for us. I went back to my cell and I reflected on that piece of paper, like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And that same day, I walked over to a friend here. He had his stuff together, and very respectable guy here at the prison. He had been in for a long time. I walked over to his cell. I'm talking to him, and I look down and I see a book that says substance abuse counseling. And I said, what the heck? I reached down, another book, substance abuse counseling. And then there was something on mental health. I said, I got 2 questions. I said, first question is, can I read these? And second question is, why the heck do you have these? And he said, Stephen, I'm part of the college program here, and I'm studying to be a substance abuse counselor. I said, holy cow. Well, this is something I'm really interested in. How do I do this?
Yeah.
Because I just tried to get some help. They're not going to give it to me, so I think I have to probably do it myself.
Yeah.
So divine intervention, Jay, that's how it all began.
There it is.
That's a start.
Well, Stephen, thank you for all that. Let's take a brief break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about your mission, what you do. Also, what you've done through your educating yourself is quite amazing too. And we'll be back right after this.
Thank you.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Stephen, we're back. We've set the stage. And I told everybody this is going to be a little bit different than what we're used to here. Thank you for your vulnerability. As you can tell, I just want to say this, Stephen, I'm sure you hear this all the time. The first time I heard you speak, the way I could describe you is like one of the most gentle souls. You must be described as a gentle soul often by people. Like the way you speak, your presence on camera, you just come across as very gentle. And I'm curious, as we set this up for the second part of our conversation, is that who you've always been at your core? You always consider yourself a gentle soul, and then you just kind of, like I said, the drugs, the alcohol, the success, whatever, kind of got on top of that? Or is this a new, are we talking to a new Stephen?
Yeah, I think there's probably two parts to that. I think deep within myself, I've always been a gentle soul, a child of God, a child of Source, another brother and sister of everyone on this planet. Unfortunately, my own experience is that the trauma that I went through, I grew up in an Irish household, and you didn't talk about anything in the household, outside of the household. It was a no-no. So I think the compression of all those things that contributed to my shadow complex, all those things that were there, I numbed them, all those pains, all those dysfunctions, all those things that I've been feeling, I numbed them through alcohol and drugs. And I think what came with that is like ego and hanging out with a roughneck. I was just sharing this with somebody. My dad wasn't really there, right? My dad was a serious alcoholic. And, I know now, like what I know, I think the lineage and how people grow up, his dad, he learned from him, it goes down the family line, and we need to catch that and realize it to break that chain. My brother's done a really good job of that. So my dad, not having that adult male role model in my life that I really, really respected, I ended up bonding with a lot of other guys around that had similar situations. They grew up with their mom, they grew up with a single mom. And our idea of like getting together was like getting together, drinking beers, doing beer funnels, doing the crazy stuff, going swimming and all that stuff, but also a lot of fist fighting. And it's so weird. It's like, who the heck fist fights for fun? I don't know. We did. It's just so whacked out. It's like, I look back on it now, I'm like, this is insane. It was really insane. But I hung out with a group of guys. It was toxic masculinity. We didn't know how to express ourselves. We expressed ourselves when we were angry with our fists. We'd fight each other, and it was like fun. It was like, all right, we're fighting right now, and then we'd shake hands after and give each other a hug. But that's kind of the culture that I grew up in, And then it turned into, we'd go to parties, like rave parties, and we'd go to clubs and concerts together. And then we kind of just built like this culture and this heartbeat within ourselves. So that took shape and that took form, And essentially, I think what happened is that gentle, kind, loving, caring soul, that true spirit was wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Is wearing a mask for a long time. And I just want to say this, I try to be as gentle and kind, and I try to operate from my heart. It drives some of the girls crazy because I'll say, I love you, I really do. I can feel it in my heart. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is inappropriate. And I say, well, I get it, but I'm living in a place of honesty and vulnerability, and I would be a coward if I didn't tell you how I was feeling today.
Yeah.
And I need to be honest with you because that's where I need to be in my life. And I do it with gentleness.
Yeah.
But the reality now is I just try to be the very best person that I can be. The person that you see showing up is the person that I am. And at the same time, I still have struggles, man. I live in a place that it's such a toxic environment. It's crabs in the bucket. They see you doing well. They want to pull you down. Staff gets resentful. But who you see is who I am. And of course, there's other parts. You don't see like the I still react sometimes. I still get fired up sometimes. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
fighting people and screaming at people. I still say things that are inappropriate sometimes. Like, hey, baby, I love you and I think you're beautiful and I can feel it in my heart. Just go with it.
Just go with it. Oh, that's good. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Stephen. Let's talk about let's start with your educational journey. Your educational journey, some of the things that you've done to I don't like the word better yourself, to like learn some things that you're interested in so that you can do even better work out in the world. And then we'll wrap with kind of like your mission and what you're up to. So, and I say this as a fellow coach, I know you're a certified coach. I know that's something that you've taken the time to do. That's no small feat. And you've done all sorts of other educational things. So let's talk about what you've kind of, let's say how you've invested into yourself since
I'd love to.
yeah.
I'd love to. I'd like to ask you a question,
Yeah,
if that's okay
please.
first,
Oh
because
gosh.
you've kind of inspired me a little bit with getting to know you. You know, it always takes time to get to know somebody a little bit before you
Sure.
start building that psychological safety, as we've learned about in Exchange Approach. What inspired you to get into the work that you're doing with coaching and helping people and seeing people as who they really are?
Yeah. Thank you. I'll be totally upfront and honest about it as well. I do love making a difference for people. I would be, and anybody who knows me well would know this, I would be lying if I told you it wasn't a really good way for me to get my needs met as well, because I am a complete extrovert. I am quite positive. I really like people, most people. You know, there's like people that are like, I don't like most people, but I do things with people. I'm like the person who I do things with people and actually like people, which is, yeah. Steven's raising his hand same way, which is my friend Marie. She has a great saying. She's like, I think people are punks and I just don't like them. I'm like, I think people are punks, but I love them anyway. That's kind of like my style. So it's really a good fit for me from like a career coaching, facilitation, speaking, training. What inspired me is I hired a coach about 5 years ago. And you know, a lot of coaches, I'm sure this is a very common story, as I was in my corporate career and I had a great life and I still have a great life, but there was nothing wrong. Like if you looked at it, like, there's nothing wrong. What was wrong was I felt like I wasn't doing what I was put here to do. And I think I've gotten a lot closer to that. And that's always a work in progress. Depends on the day, whether today is the day that's the day I'm doing the work I'm meant to do. And I think today is one of those days, but it was that I hired a coach. And because I didn't know, so I came from a background in selling and worked at some big companies, some smaller companies. I never had a coach. So I didn't really know what that meant. Like I was an athlete growing up, so I obviously understood that context, but I didn't even know what it meant, Steven. And then I met somebody quite randomly and she's like, oh, and I do coaching work. I'm like, what's that? I'm like, oh, this is good. This person's going to tell me what to do in my life. Now she's going to keep me from being bored and like be a better person. And she's going to tell me how to do it. We know that the coaching is not somebody telling you how to do it. And that's what happened. So I worked with that amazing coach for quite a while. And then I remember I said, hey, what do you think about, I want your opinion, not your coaching. I'm speaking this because it felt, I want your opinion, Steven, not as a coach, but as like a fellow coach. Would this be something you think I'd be good at? She's like, I think you'd be amazing at it. Here's the program I went through. I went to an observation. It was an in-person program in New York. Did that program, side hustled my coaching practice, got some very, very low paying clients who I loved. But as most coaches do, like I was not going to be able to go home and report to my wife that I had found my next lucrative career. Let's put it that way. I love that you're laughing. You're like, yeah, that resonates. And then halfway through my coach program, about 6 months into it, I went full time and started this podcast 6 months later, which is more like a fun hobby, but it's kind of like part of my brand. And coach, I do facilitation, I do training. I love watching people make changes quickly. That's my favorite. Coaching isn't always that. Training is usually that, like communication style training. But I just really like helping people get what I'll tell you what I love about coaching the most. And I don't know if this resonates for you. I think you get to see a lot more of the real people, and you get to work on stuff they actually care about. Yeah. As opposed to being a manager or something, where I was having this conversation with a client. He runs like a recruiting office. He's like 45 employees. He's like, I'm well aware that these people don't really care. They care about the paycheck. They care about creating a lifestyle for their families, but do they really care about what we're doing out in the world? Like, knowing that, but my clients, and probably the clients you work with as well, they generally bring the things they actually care about, which is really fun. And you get to know people. And I like building relationships. I think you and I are similar in that. So that's why I do it. I love it. Not every single day, every single minute of every day. There's times when like can be a little tiring, but then there's other days when it's absolutely magical. Like I don't know if you had this experience when you have a client who hired you for a thing and then they get that thing and they're like, I could have done it without you. I'm like, I disagree with that. I think you could probably do it because it's naturally you, but maybe I accelerated that along, or maybe you had more fun doing it that way. That's just super rewarding. That's why. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, thank you. That's beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing that, and a lot of it resonates with me, my friend. So
yeah, but for you, every minute of every day of coaching is perfect for you, right? Like it never. I'm kidding.
No, I think what I'm realizing in every experience that's showing up in my life, there's a silver lining in it that I have to look for.
Yeah.
And sometimes, some of these guys around here that are just angry and still in their heads, they're some of my biggest coaches in the world.
Yeah.
At the same time, I work with some of the greatest coaches in the world, many from Exchange Approach, many from HeartMath, many from different backgrounds that are into quantum healing and energy healing.
Yeah.
And just really becoming more and more fascinated with the human connection, the inspiration and the support that comes through the human connection, and how when we align with each other and when we have a good coach or when we're coaching someone, how we can actually prosper so much more and how we can succeed because of that. It's a 4-letter word, my man. Love. Yeah. You have somebody beside you, even if you're paying them $500 an hour, they're loving you. They want to make the money, but they still love you. They want to see you succeed. I think that's what makes a great coach is.
Yeah.
That coach really loves their client and loves to see them succeed.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff dreams are made of right there, my man.
Yeah.
Love.
It is. But and last thing I'll say in this is what's interesting about that is you get trained through my coach training program. Like, you don't want to become attached. Because, and I wouldn't say I'm attached like in an unhealthy way, but God, I do love some of my clients. Yeah. And I've had a few clients that like we don't work together for whatever reason. Like they got what they wanted, they're onto something else. That stings a little bit, not because I need the money, but because like I'm seeing your face every other week, or like that's a thing. That's a thing for me for sure. And I'm very aware of it. So I need to watch that, because that getting too attached to your clients is also not healthy.
Or friends or girls or anybody or anything, right? Yeah. And somebody just said it to me, like I just went through a situation with somebody that I really considered a dear friend, and something happened, a miscommunication, and versus a conversation, she had made a decision. And my standpoint was like, hey, I'm your friend, I care about you, let's have a conversation. And a coach, my dear friend, Coach Donna, she said, Stephen, God puts some people in our lives for seasons. He puts some people in our lives for the long term, or she, whatever you want to identify God as. And I truly believe that. I mean, we can extend an olive branch to everybody. We can be here and just be love, and not everybody's going to want that. And everybody's like my friend Loren says from Sutra, he says that we all show up in these spaces. Like, I have certain things going on you don't know about. Sure. You have certain things going on I don't know about. And what allows us to know about those things is a psychological safety that we build, our relationship, where I can open up and say, hey, I'm really suffering with this right now. I'm really going through this right now. And that's what's screwed up about the world a little bit, my man, is we have gotten to a place where like people aren't even present enough for people to really get into that stuff, to have psychological safety. Yeah. So that's one thing that I always strive to do a better job at. I fail miserably a lot of times, but I always keep that in my mind and in my consciousness. I'm like, I need to be present for people, because there's a lot of people that aren't present for them.
Yeah. Presence. Yeah. Another person on this podcast, I don't remember who it was. I think the question they asked me is something around what's missing. I said, presence is so missing most of the time. Me too. Me
God.
too. It is so hard. It's no matter what you're doing, no matter whether you have where you are, no matter where I am, like, it's so hard because there's so many things.
So many.
All the time. I'll give you a funny little anecdote about this before we talk about what you're up to now. One of the trainings that I do for this company On the Room, which is amazing. I'll say, let's all be honest. We're talking about presence. Say, let's all be honest right now. How many screens do you have up right now? And we'll do a poll. And people will be honest, because I'll laugh. I'll be like, hey, I'm going to tell you all. I have 4 screens up right now. And I'll tell them, I said, I have our training script. I have the Zoom. And I have like messaging and this, that. How many of you? I had somebody the other day who had 14 screens open. And they're like browser tabs. I'm like, no, the actual screens that you could look at. He's like 14. I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah, but that's why I love John and his training. I love it when he goes, all right, everybody put your hands up, and you can see like people there do that stutter step because they're in the middle of an email and they have to throw the hands up or grab a pen and throw the pen in. Yeah. I love that, bringing people. I mean, that's our job as a coach or a facilitator. Yeah. It's always bringing people back to the present moment, right? Bringing them back.
Without making them wrong, without making it.
That's right. With love.
With love. And also, hey, I get that you're in sales and you have your boss asking for a report and you may need to do it. And I can also see you multitasking over there. Let's just call it on a bit. That's so good. Like, everyone put your hands up.
Whoa. You got me. Yeah.
You got me. Yeah, you got me. I love that. Well, Stephen, let's talk now about, so you're a coach. You've gone through some coach training. You're doing some other educational work as well. Let's talk for a minute about that. And let's talk about the awakening and the mission and what you are currently doing with your life. Let's talk about that.
Oh, what a great question. Thank you. First, I want to define love. Love is the extension of oneself for the spiritual development of oneself and another. So love is the extension of oneself for the spiritual development of oneself and another. I'm talking about like love, like the universal language of love. I'm not talking about when you find that woman that like, oh my God, like your heart like starts jumping all over the place every time you see her, and like you don't even know what to say, and you're like, I just love you, baby. I'm talking about the universal love that I feel for you right now, that I feel for everybody that I work with. By you being here with me today, you're developing spiritually, and you're also providing me that space to develop spiritually. I get that love from John Berg. That dude, like, he's a love bug. I get that from a lot of coaches and consultants from the Exchange Approach. I get that from my man Lorenz from Sutra. He's amazing. And his wife. I get that from Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's a dear friend of mine now. So love. And that's why I'm in my educational journey, is because of love, man. I went back to education after finding those books and said, hey, I heard there's a college secret, like there's a secret college. This was like a quest for Zelda. Remember Zelda when you had to go look for the princess?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Princess Zelda. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's what education was like when I first got here. It was like drugs, gangs, violence, knives. Where's the education? That's the princess. You got to go find the princess. So, I went on this exploration to find education. So you had to go through these doors and through these different departments, and you go out and the cop has to let you in. He's like questioning you, why are you here? And I'm like, I'm trying to get an education, man. I tried to get substance abuse a couple of weeks ago. That didn't work. Hopefully this does.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, you can get it when you're 6 months from being done. You can have your education. You're like, what is going on here?
Yeah. 2007, nobody was talking about recovery, so they look like them. He probably said, you probably need mental health, boy. You don't need education. You're talking about substance abuse. Nobody talks about that in here, and nobody did at the time.
Yeah.
So get into education. I go see this great guy named Gary and Diane, this lady that worked back there, and shared my story. I said, hey, this is what happened. I'm really inspired. They said, well, you have to get into college readiness. How long have you been out of school? I said, a long time. They said, you got to start taking some classes. So immediately signed up. I said, when do I start? They said, can you be here this afternoon? I said,
these like kind of like community college, kind of like.
Now, they had hired an ex-engineer. He was here on a murder beef, and he's like an Andy Dufresne, actually. Kind of reminds me.
Yeah, smart.
Dufresne.
Yeah.
Smart.
That was what he was.
Smart dude. Remember, he tutored. So there was a couple dudes that tutored back there, and I just went to the classes every day. And then I spent my one rec period there, a half a rec period in the gym, and then I would spend the rest of the time in the law library. And so I went through those classes. It was a college readiness math, college readiness writing, and showed that I kept showing up, and they admired that. So they said, we'll give you an opportunity. You pay half, the prison will pay half of your classes.
Wow.
So paid for my first two classes. I'll never forget it. My first class was Introduction to Literature, and my second class was history, or excuse me, it was not history. Oh my goodness gracious. It was human services.
Mm.
And that's where, like, I learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Immediate mic drop, immediate like game changer for me, learning about self-actualization. They weren't talking about self-transcendence back then, the new level, and then, immediately got into school, and then paid for those two classes, did really well, and found out there was a lady named Doris Buffett, the sister of Warren Buffett, that was coming to the prison. And she had been coming here for years, and she ran a program called the Sunshine Lady Foundation. I said, you got to get out of here. I went and saw that guy that I told you about in the beginning that had the books in the corner of his cell. I said, hey, do you know something about this Sunshine Lady Foundation? He said, I sure do. That's how I've got my college paid. I said, I've been paying for my classes, and there's what's going on here, man? And he said, no, you should have asked. I said, I should have asked. You're right. I just paid for two classes. But I needed to take those two classes anyway to show Doris and the Sunshine Lady Foundation that I was committed. And fortunately, my man, this guy named Sean Pica, he had got released from Sing Sing prison. He had done, I think, 15 years. He was 16 years old when he went in. He got released. He became a friend of Doris's. He went through the education program, and he came up and interviewed me. And I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, it's something I share all the time. He said, Stephen, you have an opportunity. He said, we have a 77% recidivism rate in our prisons across the United States. He said, if any one of our major highways had a 77% fatality rate, don't you think they'd shut the highway down to see what was going on wrong? And I've used that ever since. And I said, you're absolutely right. He said, you have an opportunity to not only change your life around with this, but you have an opportunity with your time to help so many people. I said, I want that.
Mm-hmm.
So went through a bunch of comprehension, went through a bunch of different meetings with him. Doris came up. I got to meet Doris, God bless and rest in peace, Doris, lady who changed my life. Got to meet her, and I was invited into her scholarship program that she had been running in prisons across the United States. So she supported me with my associate's degree. She supported me with my first bachelor's degree, which was in liberal arts. And then myself and a good friend of mine, Brandon Brown, we had looked at master's degree programs. He was interested in restorative justice. I was interested in social work at the time. And I didn't have my bachelor's in science. So the introductory classes for the master's was like 15 G's, and I didn't have that kind of money, and I knew I needed to ask for help. So like I'm sitting there praying and meditating, and I said, what is my best bet? And I said, you know what? I'm going to ask Doris to go back and get a second bachelor's degree in mental health and human services. I get a lot of the foundational classes done. I can go in. It will take me like another year and a half. I sent her a letter. She came up. It was our graduation. I told her my plan. She gave me a big hug, and she said, whatever you need help with, I'll help you and I support you. And went back in. I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in mental health human services. I got certified in substance abuse counseling. I got certified in mental health and rehabilitation. As a technician, I started putting that to use down in the mental health unit here in the prison, in the segregation unit where guys were cutting up all the time. And at that time too, Jason, I got involved. This beautiful, beautiful soul. Oh my gosh, you talk about beautiful souls, right? It reminds me kind of Adair Cates and some of these women on Exchange that just show up. They're always like smiling, and they're like energy, Jana, like their energy is always good, and they're like always lifting people up. You don't see that a whole lot in this world. Marnie Task reminds me of that.
Yeah.
The yoga instructor. So I see this lady always coming in the prison, always smiling. She had that glow. The only other time I've seen that glow, Bo Lozoff, he wrote this book called We're All Doing Time. He came to the prison, gave a talk on meditation and the power of meditation, played guitar, Johnny Cash, never forget it.
Makes sense.
As he was sitting in lotus style up on a table, this orb of light came around him, and that was like, it gave me chills. I've never seen that before. Candace walked into the prison. I saw that same orb of light, so I knew she was a light being traveling, and always smiling, always took her time. I worked in substance abuse at this time. She'd always come over. How are you? It's good to see you. She said, there's something special about you, always saying it. And come to find out, she's the lady that ran the hospice program.
Hospice. Okay.
Hospice, yeah. So I already knew what was going to happen. I felt it in my heart. My guy I worked with in substance abuse had been serving with hospice for a while. I was freaked out about it, like, cleaning somebody up, and just, there was some things that were unsettling to me. But I heard the story, like in the old prison, these guys would be in the infirmary. Nobody was there to love them. Nobody was there to care about them. They'd have open sores because nobody was reporting. Oh. They'd be in their feces and in their own waste for days. And they were taking care of each other. Men dying were actively caring for the next man because they weren't seen human enough to get care. So hearing that story, I said, I'm in. There was no even question. The cleaning people up, all that stuff, I just set it right aside and got involved. And I got involved with the hospice program as I was finishing up my second bachelor's, Jason, and ended up getting my training in as a personal support specialist, which is similar to a CNA. It's underneath a CNA or a RNA or whatever the heck it is, CNA, I think.
Yeah.
And started caring for men while I'm teaching. So I started teaching substance abuse classes here, and I'll circle back to that in a second, but started caring for these men in the infirmary. And like, we're talking about education here. That's where I gained like this really big, profound education. Like my heart, you talked about that gentle soul that I am. Something happened in hospice that the only way I can describe it, it like took this leather sheath off my heart and opened me up. And I remember I cared for this man. His name is Michael. And Michael was 46 years old. He had AIDS. And he was up in the infirmary. And I'll never forget it. He was like always just a passionate, nice, sweet guy. Really just sweet guy. And I remember they told him he had like 5 months or 6 months to live or something. And immediately, like Bruce Lipton talks about in biology and belief, them planting that seed, he immediately started deteriorating.
Yep.
But that's where caring for that guy, that's where I had out of all the school books, out of everything I've been through in my life, out of everything I've learned more from him and those guys up in hospice. I think I've learned from anybody about really, really living and what it means to live. So I'd go up and care for him and care for the other men in the infirmary. And I'll never forget it. I just learned from him, like, while he was actively dying, it was still his mission to make people smile. We'd throw on Maroon 5, Dance Like Jagger. He'd be actively dying, like dancing in his bed. I never felt so much love. I started really feeling it, and it like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost indescribable. But what I will say, it was like I had been hardened for years,
Sure.
hardened by the adverse childhood experiences I've gone through, hardened by my experiences growing up with a bunch of bruisers, hardened by my experiences of like really distrusting and not liking the police at all because of the way that they flex authority. I was really hardened by the court system and going through a system where I thought court was supposed to be ethical and like honest. It's not. I was really hardened by getting up here to the prison system to see how people are treated, and I end up in the infirmary, and there's just so much love. And I'll never forget it. It was a night we were up doing a shift, and he had his brother come up, and he was actively dying. We all knew, and just smiling and just looking at you, when somebody really looks at you in the eyes and really gives you that love. And his brother went to the bathroom. I'll never forget this. This is a game changer for me. And I'm sitting in the corner. Candace is there. My friend Paco, God rest his soul. He passed away in an accident when he left prison. I'm in there with that man, and I'm in with my friend Dana, and Michael passed. And I'll never forget this. This is the gentle and soft moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
So he passed. I'm standing just a little bit away from him. I felt it. And What do you mean? I felt electricity. It's the craziest thing in the world. I felt electricity go up my fingertips. It went through my whole body, and it bang hit my heart. Immediately, tears just started flowing. Not tears, but just like a wail. I just started wailing. I'm in a prison, a maximum security prison. It's supposed to be the toughest of the tough, and here I am wailing, bawling my eyes out, bawling, and I can't stop. And it's not just about Michael passing, it's about everything. It's about my life, it's about what I'd done, it's about the guilt, it's about the shame. It just all came out, and I felt him leave my body. He entered. It sounds his spirit, his soul, his energy entered my body, and it clicked something on. And I remember my friend Bobby, his name is Bobby Payson. He said, "Stevie, let's go outside." And he just went outside, gave me the biggest hug in the world. Yeah, and I just remember that was the game changer for me. I just said, my whole life I've been doing all this stuff. I've not been paying attention. I've been only concerned with myself. This isn't about me. This is about us. This is about giving and spreading love to everybody and providing everybody with opportunities and seeing everybody as my brother. And with that, I was able to care for. I met this other guy up in the infirmary who became my teacher. His name was Chucky, and this guy had bone marrow cancer and came here devastated, shattered bones. I mean, shattered bones. He couldn't walk. They had a Hoyer lift, one of those lifts that lift the person up and puts them in bed. And so, man, I went up with this whole mindset of I just want to love you, brother. And he never experienced love either. So I went up, we started meditating. Dude, what happened was nothing less than a miracle. This guy with bone marrow cancer who had shattered bones started healing.
Wow. He
started walking. His whole life changed. He started getting better and beating the cancer. And I'm like, this is profound. This is amazing. And he attributed it all to love.
Mm-hmm.
But those guys were my greatest teachers.
Yeah.
I ended up graduating with my second bachelor's degree in health and human services. I read this book, mentioned it already, Biology of Belief, Dr. Bruce Lipton.
I read Gabriel Mate in the Realm of Hungry Ghosts that talks about substance abuse. It talks about the Portland house up in Canada where Gabriel did his work and his research. Read in The Body Keeps the Score, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. Amazing book.
Yep.
In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, so two things. I listen when I read something. Body Keeps the Score says you got to do yoga. Issues are in the tissues. You got to get rid of those suckers. So what happens? I sign up for my yoga. I sign up for my yoga instructor training, right? Second thing happens, I read Biology of Belief thanks to Gabriel Mate, quoting Bruce Lipton in that book, and pick up Biology of Belief. I read through it, I think, in a day. I'm like, this is amazing. I said, I got to reread that book. Reread the book. I said, I cannot believe this. Like, everything, you talk about a shift. So now my heart just changed, right? Through this hospice experience.
Yeah.
I read this Biology of Belief book. My mind completely shifts. So now I have a heart that shifted. My mind shifted. I said, what source, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What is your direction for me? What am I supposed to be doing? Social work. I remember I had goals. Social work. I took the goal. I ripped it up, flushed it down the toilet. I said, this isn't my plan. And then what I realized in that moment, Jason, was I have an opportunity to empower people. I read this book by Dr. Ellen Langer called Mindfulness. And then I picked up her next book called Becoming an Artist. And I realized, thanks to Bruce Lipton, and then picking up Evolve Your Brain by Dr. Joe Dispenza, I started saying to myself, holy shucks. People are sick, and there's a 77% recidivism rate, because people in prison are not loved. But B, we're perpetuating a narrative that they are the worst choice that they ever made, or they are the sickness, or we're labeling people, we're stuffing them and putting them in a cell, we're warehousing them, and then we're releasing them, and we think that's going to work. There's a problem with that. I went into prayer, went into meditation. I ended up with this book by Martin Seligman called Flourish. And I said, that's it. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Positive psychology. I love psychology. It's on. But I've been peer coaching in the prison for the past umpteen years. I wrote to the governor and got a peer recovery coaching program in here.
Nice.
So I said, oh my God, this university. I read Evolve Your Brain. In the back, I see Joe Dispenza went to Life University. I reached out to Harvard and UPenn. I couldn't go because it required on-campus residency.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I didn't go. And thank God I didn't, because I ended up in the best school in the world, Life University, where Dr. Joe went, learned so much, gifted with so much, got into their coaching program, and developed a prisoner coaching program called The Awakening. And that's how the exchange started.
Wow. I don't even know where to begin. Being like, wow. Let's wrap today. And yes, we'll have you come back on to talk about whatever the heck you want to talk about. As everybody's probably like, wow, never ending vault and of amazing things over here. What's up? So let's talk about coaching inmates. Let's talk about that.
We're gonna help everybody in the world right now on this call, because there's gonna be, I'd say, at least 100,000 people that listen to this call. Because when we start this process of talking now, they're gonna go back and listen to this one. So we're just gonna say incarcerated experiencers.
Incarcerated experiencers.
That's right.
Incarcerated experiencers. Thank you for the education. I've never heard that term before.
Well, we're going to coin that.
There it is. Here it is.
And I attribute that to my dear friend Mikhail Pitts that said that to me and I love it.
Experiencers. It makes sense. So incarcerated experiencers. As somebody who's knows coaching, knows the ICF frameworks, and knows all these things, what kind of things do you coach people around that are in prison? Like, what are some of the things that people want to work on?
Such a good question, my friend.
Well, and I'll give you a little context. I do executive coaching. So my people are like, how do I grow my business? How do I raise capital? All the kind of or how do I be a better leader? And so I'm just really fascinated. And yes, this is kind of because I'm just really curious and fascinated. I'm in prison for 30 years and I have no chance of getting out, or I'm not up for parole for 15 years. And I want to go coach and I want to work with a coach. What am I working on? Like I know the answer, I think, because I'm a coach myself, but from like the outside looking in, what kind of things do people want to work on, or what do they work on? What kind of difference does coaching make for people that you work with and people that the Awakening works with?
Beautiful question. Thank you. And I'll probably answer this and kind of spin onto the Awakening a little bit.
Yeah, please.
I think it's a beautiful way to probably wrap today's.
Yeah.
So coaching in prison, it started off with recovery, right?
Substance abuse recovery.
That's right.
Got
That's
it.
right. So recovery was really a taboo issue that nobody talked about. You talked about recovery. So I spearhead this recovery movement in the prison, and I went through a lot of crap, and like I had a good reputation in the prison, so everybody knew it was legitimate. So I start getting involved with recovery. I get this whole huge like grassroots movement going. And coaching there looked like just the 8 areas of wellness. And it looked like getting people and helping people develop SMART goals. I studied the heck out of motivational interviewing in my bachelor's degree through my mental health. So I went through a couple really beautiful courses that taught me DARNC, the OARS, the readiness ruler, really how to lay out and create discrepancy in somebody that I'm working with. So that you got to be careful with that in prison. You go up to a guy with tattoos all over his face and say, your actions aren't lining up, your words aren't lining up with your actions, dude. Yeah. You better make sure you got good
You're
rapport.
Out of integrity right now. They're like, what?
Well, that's the coolest shit. That's the coolest thing in the world, though, is like when you develop relationships with people, you can have those conversations.
Totally.
And I say that with people, and it's great. But Jason, it's just anything you can imagine on the outside is probably similar stuff on the inside. I'm coaching people typically on reentry. It's like what you need to do today. They're like, but Stevie, I have 25 years left on my sentence. I said, doesn't matter. Reentry started the day you got arrested, my friend.
Yeah.
Everything you do from this moment forward counts. Everything counts. Every letter you write, every thought you put into your mind, every book you read, every time you move your feet, it counts. And that's the message I try to share with people. It's like, get involved, get moving, and get going, And when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, all these guys are watching. I said, hey, this is what I say in my speech. I said, I'm going to earn my master's degree and a PhD. And they laughed. There's no master's degree program here, Steve. You're crazy. That stuff's online. You'll never be able to do that. And I said, no, I'm going to be able to do that. And that's what I try to coach people with. It's like changing your mindset and embracing what Dr. Bruce Lipton teaches us. 95% of our thoughts are subconscious programming.
Yep.
5% of those thoughts are actual true consciousness, and those belong to us. 95% of what's going on in our mind is that tape saying, you can't do this. You're a piece of shit for coming into prison. You're no good. You are that worst choice you've ever made. You are this. You are that. Those things keep coming up in a person's mindset. So my hope and my goal is to spend time with somebody. It's amazing when you give somebody presence, Jason. When somebody spent their whole life not feeling seen, heard, and felt, and you give somebody a half hour, I can just ask a simple question. That simple question is, how you doing today?
Yeah. People are like, wait, what? You don't need something from me. You just want to genuinely know how I'm doing. You're like, I genuinely want to know how you're doing.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Oh, man.
It's amazing, right? So we help guys, some of the recent coaching I've done, I just helped a guy get out of here. We put together a release plan. I helped him put together a resume. I supported him with locating some jobs in the area that he was getting released to. I supported him with a federal bonding program and with the 200, the $7,500 tax rebate that somebody gets for hiring somebody leaving the prison system.
Yeah.
So that's one scenario. I'm working with another guy right now. He's got a 35-year sentence. He's an African-American dude. Sweet guy. He's going through the stresses of prison, how negative it is here. So we just kick it, and I spend time with him, like uplifting him, asking him questions about how he's going to spend his next 35 years and if the negativity is going to draw him in. So I teach a class on Friday nights. It's called Positive Mindset. And the hope and the goal of that class is we do things like VIA, character strengths. We do values. We look a whole lot at, goodness gracious, I can't even think of the term, but we look a whole lot at different areas of psychology. And we also look at not fusing to things that are happening in our life, rather than fusing, sticking to our values, acceptance, commitment therapy. So the coaching is all over the place. If it's somebody that needs help because they're feeling depressed and sad or down, I sometimes will refer them to a mental health clinician because that's not my job.
Yep.
But for the most part, it's the same if we were on the outside. Like, some guys want help with jobs. Some guys want help with communication with their family. Some guys want help with like getting to a minimum facility. Some guys, I used to be in the gym a lot, so I look more like a milk bag right now, but some guys, that's not true. I'm still got like a steel plate underneath, but some guys want help with fitness and putting together a fitness plan. So again, it goes to that 4-letter word of just spreading love.
Yeah. Amazing, Stephen. Wow. I want to say, I'm going to say something I'm sure you know, how fortunate your fellow people are there with you, to have you there with them.
Thank you, my friend. That's sweet.
But I don't know if you know this or not. I know you're well connected, and I would assume that you are, I'm going to assume, which is bad to do, but that you are connected with other Stevens around the country that are inside the prison system in some way, shape, or form. Like, you must know of other people doing this sort of work. This seems like something that should be more official, something that should be more institutionalized in a way of, hey, we need more people that want to do this work, that we've either identified or hey, you're interested, and everybody's going to have their own flavor of it. But this is what you're doing, is all of your own volition, all of your own proactivity. I'm not talking about the education. I'm talking about the work you're doing with people, with the population. There are some places where does not happen, period. Right?
That's right. You're absolutely right.
That seems like a huge miss.
So you and I right now on this podcast, we're making history. We are making history because there's not a lot of people I'm in my prison cell right now, right?
Yeah.
In a maximum security prison.
Yeah.
On this call, about to talk to you about the Awakening Exchange now, right?
Yeah.
Maine is a pioneer in the field of corrections. Maine is the first place in the United States to open up technology the way that it's opened up, giving the residents this level of trust to be on. So Maine has made history. My hope, my goal, and my job is to share this with everybody. And it was a great question that you were asking, and it really is a good segue into what the Awakening is and what we're doing. So for my master's degree, I developed that coaching program, and I was asked, this is a long story. We could go into this. This would be a really good one at some point, but
this would be a good follow-up for sure.
Yeah. I just say this quickly. I ended up presenting the Awakening, and I trained with John Berghoff.
Mm-hmm.
That dude changed my life, man. I went through that training. I present utilizing exchange approach, and there's like 60 people that show up to this call, and I think I'm just presenting my capstone. What I didn't realize is I exchanged the heck out of it. All these people showed up. I get these letters of encouragement after. They said, Stephen Matthew Clark, you have a gift to facilitate. Lo and behold, I
tip my hat to Mr. Berghoff, Adir, Steven, Bouchard, everybody else that gave that 2-hour free training.
Sure.
And I just took that forward into this presentation that I did, and then started doing these online exchanges for criminal justice and prison reform. And what's happened, Jason, is in a period of 12 months, we've grown to over 1,000 people. We have people in, I think, 18 different countries that join us in different times, which is freaking amazing. We have change champions. The commissioner of the Maine Department of Corrections allowed me to interview him from my prison cell with over 160 people on the Zoom call, which was amazing.
Yeah.
The warden let me interview him from my prison cell. I've interviewed. Right. The warden. So he's a radical, really kind-hearted dude, just like the commissioner. These men are some of the greatest leaders that I've ever met. I wish that we could turn them on to the exchange, Dr. Danny Friedland, and some of the other work that's going on. But these men, I'll tell you, they are powerhouses. And thank God for them. I see it's 12:10, Jay. I'll come finish up these thoughts.
We're good.
I'm running an exchange right now. I just want to say this from my prison cell that has gotten world attention. Mm-hmm. We are bringing people together at no cost on Zoom once a month. And we're actually doing leadership meetings now every Saturday night. We're bringing people together from around the world that are interested in seeing the United States prison system heal, just like our tagline here, from the inside out. Mm-hmm. Just like yoga and meditation, healing has to start from within. And I believe the same is true in our prison systems. The healing has to take place within the system and then bring itself out within each and every person. So now I'm in a position to run these exchanges. It's been one of the most amazing experiences and educational experiences of my life. That is what I've taken into, we haven't even talked about this. I graduated with my master's degree, and I became the first person, this is what I'm being told, in the United States to start a PhD program from a maximum security prison at an accredited college, right?
Amazing.
So first person in history start a PhD program from an accredited college in a maximum security prison. And my work, my man, is to do exactly what we're doing right here. It's to look at ways we can utilize technology. So I'm researching ways we can utilize technology to help heal the prison system, one person at a time. So perfect example of it. I get on this call with you, you're smiling, you're not feeling good today, you still take time out of your day to meet with me. Stephen Matthew Clark feels like, holy Moses, somebody cares about him. So now I feel seen, heard, and felt. I feel supported and loved by you. I feel that coherence and that contagion jump in, that emotional contagion of love and kindness. Now, what do you think happens when I get off this call? I get off this call.
I hope you pay it forward.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I get off this call with that energy in me, working with a guy like you that took his time to work with me, and I go take that out into prison. Now, imagine if we did that to prisons across the United States and abroad.
Amazing. Wow.
That's what, I know these are closing thoughts right here, but I
for now, yeah.
I just want to say to everybody on this call that's listening, thank you for the opportunity to share with you. Thank you for listening to, my experience. I hope I've presented myself in a way that allowed you to connect with my message. And really, my message boils down to this. We're all children of the Creator. We've all made mistakes in our lives. We've all made poor choices in our lives. Nobody wants to be judged by the worst choice you've ever made. And there's always a why, usually, right? People, I don't think, wake up one morning and say, I'm going to go hurt somebody, or I'm going to go rob a store, or I'm going to do this. There's always a why behind that behavior. And what I would say, like, Jesus didn't hang out with the Romans. Jesus hung out with prisoners.
For the prisoners, yeah.
In fact, somewhere in the Bible, I think it talks about, like, letting and having all beings be free.
Yeah.
And what I would encourage everybody on this call to do is, like my friend, I call him my friend now, Jason, has done, take some time to talk to a prisoner. Take the time to maybe even go to a local prison or look somebody up. Put in a visiting application, send them a letter, surprise the heck out of them, and get to know somebody in prison. Because first off, we all need love. Think about going into an animal shelter with a little puppy. They're all looking, and they put on that little face, and they put on a little cry. We're pretty similar to that.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, like, take it, but it's the truth. It's like, man, I want to feel that love. I want to be loved. I want to be seen, heard, and felt and recognized. And that's what you've done for me today, Jason. And that's what I would encourage anybody on this call. If you know somebody in prison, send them a letter and just say, hey, I'm thinking of you. I love you. I'd love to have a conversation. Send them $10 to their phone account so they can call you. Have a quick conversation with these people. See how they're doing. And that's what's going to help heal the prison system is love.
Yeah. Amazing, Stephen. Well, like I've said this a few times, the first of multiple conversations. We're going to have you back on again here when we can make it work. I know you have some big things you're working on right now that we'll cover next time as well. I just want to thank you for your vulnerability, for your love. Really been a pleasure to get to know you in this way and record it for everybody. We've gotten to know each other a little bit, but this has just been mind-blowing. Thank you for the work you're doing for those fellow people there with you. And I'm sure there's a lot of love headed your way from people listening when this comes out, and we'll have you back on again soon. Take care, brother.
Jay, I look forward to it. Thank you very much. Much love to you.
Thanks.
You.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.